Hello everyone. I just want to take this time to remark on something that's happening in the markets right now, and that's oil prices. Oil prices have collapsed. Basically, they are at an all-time low with some grades of oil, and this is historic. But it relates to what's happening to the economy due to the coronavirus, and it has the basis for basic supply and demand. In other words, you could understand what's happening to oil prices simply by understanding what supply and demand is all about. So one of the things that we see here is oil prices in some regards have actually gone negative. Now, what does that mean, negative? That means instead of selling oil, you've got to pay somebody to take your oil. Now, WTI, that stands for West Texas Intermediate Crude Oil. That's a type of oil that comes from, well, Texas. And you could buy oil ahead of time. These are called futures contracts. Let me just underline that, futures contracts. Now, a future contract is simply you're paying a price for a product to take ownership of sometime in the future. For example, if you want to sell your home in 1 year's time, you could enter into a contract with another individual and say, hey, I'll sell you my home for $200,000 at the end of 2021. And at the end of 2021, the person who you're selling it to will pay that agreed upon price. That's a futures contract. Well, you could buy oil ahead of time and prepay, set a current price, a set price, and that's an oil futures contract. And what we're seeing is the oil futures contracts that will take ownership of the oil in May. The price that you would pay for that contract has plunged 321% and is now negative, meaning you've got to pay somebody to take the oil. Now, the current price for a Brent crude oil, that's another type of oil, another grade of oil, that's dropped 9.5%, and that's going at a positive number of $25.41. Now, the cause of this is the coronavirus. The coronavirus has collapsed demand for oil. If the economy is not really going anywhere, that means you don't need energy to power it. And one of the fundamental energy sources for our economy is oil. So when you look at the two sets of graphs, this is, let's say, aggregate supply for all goods and services. And this is aggregate demand for all goods and services. Here's the price, here's the quantity. And what we're seeing is the stay-at-home orders, businesses shutting down. This has really shifted demand for all goods and services this way, which means we're producing fewer items and price levels for many goods and services are going to be falling. Now, let's look at a crude oil. We have the same approach. We have supply and we have demand. Price of oil, quantity of oil. And OPEC, Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, what they try to do is they try to counteract this shifting leftward shift of overall demand, which is going to hurt the price of oil because the demand of oil is going to drop. What they try to do is they try to say, well, let's try to get prices to go up by reducing our supply. If OPEC countries cut back supply, that's going to shift the supply curve over to the left. And now, in theory, this should raise the price of oil. P1, P2. But what has happened is the demand of oil has counteracted. So let's say we do move to here, this point right here. We move from this equilibrium to this equilibrium. What has happened is this has shifted so far over to the left that we moved back here. So even though we started here, we try to move here, we've gone now below the original price. And what we're seeing here is this shift in demand is so far over to the left that in some cases it's bringing the price of oil to zero. And oil paid for future delivery is now negative. So the WT market has entered in what they call a contango, well, meaning spot prices are now lower than the price for future delivery of oil, and this is very, very unusual. But all of this can be explained by the overall economy and how it impacts the price of oil in particular. So what we cover in class can be used to help explain this, but this kind of gives you an idea of how serious the economic contraction has been due to the coronavirus.